Good morning / good afternoon. Namo Amida
Good
Butsu.
morning. Namo Amida Butsu.
I see you've
Yes. I finally cut the shaggy
lowered your ear. the shaggy hair, shaggy look.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So how have you been?
Well, I'm doing well. The world is a bit crazy right now, so
Yes,
there's a lot of
lot
the war in Ukraine and so on. So I've been probably a bit shorter on sleep.
Several years now, actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's always.
But there's always something. But like this is the past several years have been pretty concentrated with all kinds of mappo-ness.
Yeah, samsaric.
Intense
samsaric madness.
Anyway, yeah. So,
yeah. So, what have you been thinking about?
Well, I listened.
How is your listening going?
Last few sessions because just of the thread we were covering about the sorts of secular mindset, secular so-called quote unquote secular rational cynical scientific mindset to and issues around that, and we're talking about the issue of slander of the Dharma and the five grave offenses and ikantikas and all that stuff, and then listened again to the bit about where I was talking about my habituated mindset to occasionally but recurringly take in, not just take a passing interest, but it's still attached to a couple of the 95 non-Buddhist ways. And just so I could see where we got to in those conversations. They were really helpful. Actually, it was really good to finally have those conversations fully and put that on the table, put those cards on the table. I had never really done that in many of my Dharma discussions, any of my deep listening, any of my trying to clear the channels, any of my trying to empty the cup, as it were. I never, really was that thorough and honest about discussing those things, if you see what I mean. So
yeah. Well, you could say that this is as far as you have come to this point in your journey of deep listening, right?
Yes,
because you now have, like you said, you have all the cards on the table. It's like in poker, when you go all in. Yes, and you put it all out there. You have to, when it comes to the Buddha Dharma, you can't or when it comes to listening, to the Dharma, you can't be holding things back. You've got to go all in, right?
Exactly.
Put it all out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of a decision I made, after the events of last summer, and then getting in touch with Kobai Sensei and then yourself. In the course of all that, I made that decision to go all in. As Paul Roberts used to say, going all in, all my chips in with Amida. So that's part of that decision was, as I say, I'm being very ruthless about raising my questions and doubts and and Dharma issues, quote unquote, or issues with myself that would cause, problems of receptivity or whatever it is with the Dharma, whatever, I don't mean issues, trying to solve my, I don't mean, trying to solve my psychological issues or anything like that. I just mean anything that interferes with the Dharma, as it were, or the
right
or receptivity. So yeah, that was part of that decision, is, me going all in and taking refuge. Well, I need to finally actually,
right.
And it's always hung over me. It's always been hanging over me. Those really harder, deeper, questions that really interfere. I'd go over and over them again within myself, but never would had the trust or courage or ability, I think, before to really say, okay, I need to discuss this with somebody, with a person of Shinjin, so that I can, get on with that, get on, as part of my deep listening, So they're the tough. I think we've gotten most of the bigger, tougher ones on the table now. Like, I think we've got there's you got the religion one, the 95 non-Buddhist ways, habituated, occasional but recurrent attachment to those.
Yeah.
Then there's the secular / cynical / so-called rational scientific mindset thing, philosophical pessimist thing that recurs. That's a strong one. And that interferes with. And then just my question about that has come up in different ways from different angles about my karmic suitability to even be able to be receptive to the Dharma, or my, just not even karmically, but just within me, am I going to, do I have the receptors even, that question, that blockage to things. And it's just helped a huge amount to get those all up there. I think that's all. Is that the big ones?
Yeah, I think those are the major.
Besides the sort of dharmic kind of questions that I had that were big, oceanic.
Right. Like the Adi Buddha and the 5 Buddhas and so on, and the nature of Amida.
The more I've just discussed that, the more it's not as pressing. And it seems to, even though I don't think we've got to a definitive answer about that, it just seems to make sense to me that, it's all true in some way.
It's all,
if I was a Buddha, I get it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, it all arises from suchness, and it's called tathata or ichinyo or oneness, right?
Yeah.
And that is suchness, oneness. Shinran Shoni talks about this a lot, actually, in Kyogyo Shinsho, but that's the ultimate reality, the truth, the ultimate filtered truth. And then from that, all of these teachings and Buddhas and so on arise. And like you said, it's true. It's all true, in some way to someone. It's a, upaya, right? The skillful means of the Dharma body, approaching us kind of in order to save us, right? So yeah, that is. And I think the big, I definitely want.
There's the other question the big Dharma question was one of the vows where Dharmakaya vowed that if my lifespan is not, how does it put incalculable? Say it again.
If my lifespan is limited even down to billions and trillions of kalpas, then may I not attain enlightenment.
Yeah, but then there's that teaching about there's sutras where it talks about Avalokitesvara, when he becomes Buddha, becoming the next kind of Amitabha, as it were, or the next Buddha that would preside over the same Pure Land. And in a sense, I think, well, yeah, both are true, because in a sense, like, I think, okay, here's how my mind goes with it. I might as well, I guess I got to talk about these things.
Yeah.
We haven't really delved it much, but and this is what I've been thinking about this week, more so than the other areas, was so even my lifespan's limited. So thinking of the three Dharma bodies, or the two Dharma bodies, however you want to view it, and the Dharmakaya is that's Buddha nature. That's the ultimate reality, the only true and real reality. And then, the Sambhogakaya, Buddha body, and then there's the Nirmana, limitless Nirmanakaya Buddha bodies. And so ultimately it all comes back to it's that Buddha will always be, there'll always be a Buddha. And Avalokiteshvara is like a Maha Bodhisattva. He's like, he actually a Buddha. Isn't
right.
But manifesting as a Bodhisattva. So if he becomes a Buddha, he'll become the Buddha, but it's already the Buddha, like, so both of them are. Do you see what I mean? Somehow it's still the Buddha. It's still ultimately the Dharma that's playing this out for us to manifest these Sambhogakaya forms. So it's ultimately, it's not limited. Do you know what I mean? Like, in that sense, it isn't. It's just that might take a different. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No.
But that's still there. That question's still there. So there's that. Okay, do I just need to say, okay, that's just a provisional teaching to teach to help certain minds or certain times and minds understand, or to be drawn toward Pure Land and Amida? Or is there ultimately some truth there that I won't ever be able to understand? Or is there some way in Jodo Shinshu where it explains that? So there's that. Same thing with the Buddha, Adi Buddha, 5 wisdom Buddhas, Buddha, the Buddha being, Amitabha being one of the 5 wisdom Buddhas, and so emanating as Shakyamuni. So ultimately that's the eternal Buddha as well, emanating as Shakyamuni Buddha. So they both are true in the Lotus Sutra. Do you see what I mean? Is there, I just need to, that's what's in the sutras. It's either provisional teaching, or there's some way it's true that I won't ever understand until I'm a Buddha, or is there some way that Jodo Shinshu explains these kinds of things? So that's a big one as well. Those kinds of, and I'm sure I have other Dharma questions like that, where I go, okay, yeah, provisional teaching, but I need to kind of understand it, and in a way that it doesn't sound to me like mental gymnastics.
Right.
There's that part of it too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I hear an explanation, and meaning, and this is just me, okay, I know I'm a bamboo. I know I'm an ignorant being, with a wretch evil mind and just, clueless. But when I hear some of the explanations about, well, that's provisional in this Pure Land Sutra, that's a provisional teaching in this one, but this is true. Sometimes my mind goes, okay, I'm hoping it's just because I'm a bamboo and I don't get it, but it sounds a little bit to me like mental gymnastics here. Do you see what I'm saying? Some of this sounds like mental gymnastics to me, that, and then I go, wait, it's the Dharma master saying this, so like they're not going to engage in mental gymnastics. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But it sounds like it to my mind. It sounds to me kind of like, okay, that's not really convincing me here. It's really not. Do you see what I mean? or explanations
I do.
people have given about these things, these questions. And anyway, so, and it's not just enough for me, at least at present, it's not enough for me to just go, okay, they're provisional teachings. Okay, I don't need to, moving on. Like, my mind won't let it go. It's not enough for me to say that. Now, again, it's not that the Dharma is not enough. It's not that Amida is not enough. It's not that Doroshinshu is not enough. Within me, this is the blockage. So this is why I need to talk about it. You see what I mean? Yeah, it's not like I'm trying to debate the Dharma masters, or I'm not trying to contradict I'm not contradicting our like amazing Dharma masters. I'm not, or anything about the Dharma at all. It's just, this is what arises in me. This is a blockage. So I need to reckon with this, bring it up and talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's as you should. I mean, you shouldn't just, I believe it. The Dharma masters said it, therefore I believe it. Isn't quite the way we go about Buddhism. I mean, we talked about the sutra in which the Buddha says, "My words need to be tried like gold." It's not an uncritical acceptance of whatever, right? So it's not like it's in the Bible, therefore I believe it, kind of.
Exactly. And
the
that's
Bible
how I'm approaching it.
So
I'm saying this is gold,
right?
But I am an amateur. I'm an amateur assessor.
Yeah.
These are diamonds. These are diamonds before me.
Yeah.
This is gold before me. These are precious, amazing gems before me. But I'm a clueless. I know nothing. I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know that craft. I don't know how to look at. But yet, I have questions about what does that carat mean? What does it mean to be that carat of gold? What does that actually mean, that it's 24 karat or that it's this carat? Or what does that, that designation of that diamond, like, and that might be that's my monkey mind, whatever, but I think that's a good analogy, actually. I'm approaching it as though it is gold, precious gem. And I'm a clueless amateur assessor trying to understand the craft. And what's and be able to actually look at what's before me in some way that I, anyway, yeah.
Well, and in the Buddhist philosophical system, there's what are called pramanas, and pramana means what can be verified epistemologically as true, right? And in Hinduism, there are 3 pramanas, and they are direct observation. So I myself have personally, I've seen it with my own eyes. I know it to be true. And the second valid means of knowledge, I believe, is inference. And that's, I know these things to be true, therefore I infer that this is also true. Mm-hmm. And then, or relying on someone who, relying on the testimony of someone who has directly experienced something, right? Yeah. That can be a valid. But then there's another one in Hinduism, which is scripture. And this is where Hinduism is actually kind of like Christianity, in that if it's written in the Vedas or the Upanishads, the Hindu scriptures, it's true by virtue of that fact. It's whatever is written in the scriptures is true and therefore a valid means of knowledge. But Buddhism has a slightly different approach, because Buddhism rejects the scriptural. Scripture as a valid means of knowledge. Now you might say, well, we have all these scriptures in Buddhism, so what is that about? Well,
and we quite
the
revere
scriptures,
them.
the scriptures are actually actually the word of someone who directly witnessed or saw the truth, right? Because the scriptures are all Shakyamuni Buddha's words. So when we are studying scripture in Buddhism, it's important to remember that what the reason we can say it's true is because it is the word of the Buddha who awakened to the truth, right? So in that sense, we when we are, as you said, it's like gold, right? It's not that you doubt that it's gold, but you have questions about how to assess it, right?
Or look
and
at
I think
it.
too, yeah. And I think for us too, like there's so many scriptures and teachings in Buddhism, and we who have access to most of them via the internet or some, the library, we want to try to like put it all together like a puzzle and make it all make sense, according to our idea of what making sense is. But again, that's a subjective, what makes sense to me might not make sense to you, right? Like I might satisfy myself with some, solution, but you may not be satisfied by that solution. So we get into this world where we're all kind of amateur assessors doing our own thing. That's where authorities like the Dharma masters, Shinran Shonin, come in, because they all had, and we need to discuss more as to why we can refer to the seven masters as masters. What does that mean? Like, what are we actually, why did Shinran choose those seven people? Is a really important, question. And that was actually covered in the course I took from Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin. So I'd like to share that with you at some point. But for our purposes, at least for now, we can say that these seven masters were all had reached a high level of realization. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, we call him a Bodhisattva because he had reached like, a very, very high level of spiritual attainment. And we rely on the masters because they, personally experienced these truths that they, write about, and then they're teaching us, right? So yeah. I don't have the capacity necessarily to understand everything that's written in the Buddhist canon, but I trust Shinran Shonin and I trust the seven masters to show me, to reveal how to interpret the sutras and the commentaries and so on. So there does have to be a level of trust involved, right? If you don't trust someone, you're not necessarily going to trust what they say about the sutras or so that's important, I think, right? We're relying on the word of the master assessors. We are the amateurs. They're the masters. They studied this. They practiced this. Many of the older, Nagarjuna he's not just the founding father of the Pure Land tradition. He's the founding father of Zen. He's the founding father of actually a total of like 8 schools of Buddhism, all trace their lineage back to him. And he wasn't just, teaching Pure Land. I mean, he was a master of meditation. He had reached all of these very high, level of spiritual attainment and awakening. So yeah, when we rely on the masters, it's important to realize that we are relying on people who had realized, right, had really attained, they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So I want to say something about the larger sutra and the sutras in general that you mentioned. Is you have this question about what's provisional, what's true, and so on, right? And there's a good example that I can give for myself.
I know what the teaching is that is the true. So the true teaching is 18th vow, generally speaking.
Right.
And, Nembutsu of faith, entrusting, wishing to be born in his land, all those things go together. And that's the, and there it's in the, it's in the sutra, but I know there's a lot of other things in the sutra.
Yeah.
You can see it's, some of it I can just kind of say, okay, well, that's part of how it's Pure Land's constructed and what it looks like, and and then there's these other means for people who don't have faith, and all of that. But sometimes when I hear the explanation of why they're provisional verses, I just am like, maybe it just doesn't make sense to me, or maybe it do you know what I mean? It's that skeptic again, that skeptical mind.
Right.
Which is a whole.
So for example,
my monkey mind. That's a, that anyway. Yeah. So.
Yeah. For example, Shinran Shonin says that of the 48 vows, right? Because in the larger sutra there are, well, let me be very specific. In the translation, in the Chinese translation of the larger sutra that we use in Jodo Shinshu, which is canonical in Jodo Shinshu, there are 48 vows that Dharmakara Bodhisattva made. And of those 48 vows, Shinran Shonin teaches that 5 are true. And then the rest are provisional, basically, provisional teachings. And when you first hear that, you might think, well, why those 5? Like, what about the larger sutra itself doesn't point these vows out as being true. There's no tag on these vows, a special note saying these are true and the rest are provisional, right? That's something that Shinran Shonin, the conclusion that he came to, right, through studying the teachings of the masters. And so I would say that's a good example of what you're talking about, where if you have more of a skeptical way of looking at it, you might be thinking, wait a minute, there's 48 vows, aren't they all true? I mean, why these 5 exactly, right? And I mean, it's such a huge question. I think that there's really no way to.
Doesn't it boil down to that those 5 are what are actually useful and pertain to bambus and mappo?
Well,
those are the 5 that pertain to to us, to ordinary foolish beings,
right?
Especially those living in mappo,
Right. And I think when it's not, but it's not just Mappo. These are like the universally true.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
Right.
But it's, so, why I said especially true in
definitely.
Yeah, that's what I say. So it pertains to us foolish. Basically, those 5 comes down to it pertains to us. Those are the ones that actually we need to focus on. They're the ones that relate to us.
Right,
who are incapable of any other practice, of any any merit, any merit that would put us one bare smallest measurement inch toward enlightenment. those are the five.
And also these 5 vows show who and what Amida is. In other words, the true nature of Amida, Buddha. And so, like you say in other sutras where it talks about, Amida apparently, going and passing into enlightenment, passing away, basically, and then his successor is Avalokiteshvara. That is probably, I would say, and I think we talked about this before, but it's, probably an earlier Pure Land Sutra that was written at a stage of the development of Pure Land thought, in which Pure Lands, different Buddha lands, there's all kinds, of Buddha lands, right? There's innumerable Buddha lands, and not all of them are Pure Lands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of them are pure.
Yeah,
some are not pure, but they're
right.
Like this is Shakyamuni's
exactly
Buddha land. The Saha world is Shakyamuni's Buddha land, essentially, and so anyway.
And then another doubt comes up when there was I think it's the Sutra of the Questions of the boy Ratnacandra. I hope I'm remembering the title, probably not. And this boy asks Shakyamuni, why is your Buddha land so impure? Why is there garbage everywhere? Why did you mess up your vows, or what? Why is there so much suffering in your land? And I think the answer is this Saha world is the way it is in order to be like a training, place for people who are of the stage to benefit from, and so on. It's an interesting sutra, actually. It almost touches on theodicy within the Buddhist worldview, which is the problem of evil, in the, within the context of the Mahayana Buddhism. But anyway, going back to
that's another one to come to with these big oceanic Dharma questions that actually, and I remember this was one of the first ones I raised. That was one of the first ones I raised in the True Buddhism group. Like one of my first questions.
Really?
My first question was, okay, well, if this is one of my questions, I know I need to ask all these, because I just went in there, I was like naive thinking, well, any question is acceptable, like any question can be. So I said, okay, if Buddha nature, so Dharmakaya, suchness, the ultimate true and real reality is perfect, is supreme, is without without impurity, etc. How do we have samsara? How do we wind up with samsara? How do we wind up with beings that And I asked that question. Oh my gosh, you would have thought I had like slandered the Dharma, like the reaction.
Oh, really? Wow.
And Paul Roberts stepped in and was like, whoa. This is a legitimate question. And there's much more helpful ways to, approach.
You might have touched. Yeah, I think questions.
I touched some nerve there.
Definitely.
And so I've never asked it again. Of anyone.
Well,
but that is one of the big oceanic Dharma questions that I have that is in the back of my mind, and it's similar to the problem of evil in, say, the Abrahamic religions, and even Gnosticism. I brought up Gnosticism last time. Even in Gnosticism, their explanation just delays the problem.
It
just puts it off to a further. It just pushes it off further, hoping you don't notice. It's not the same question, but anyway. That is one of my questions that's there, like,
Definitely.
And it's one of those things where I can easily go, well, I don't get that because I'm a bumble. That's how I see it, because I see things in this and that kind of ways. I see things in, black, kind of black and white ways. I see things in through all my subjective, diluted, obscured, way. Do you know what I mean? So I can't get, and so somehow part of me just like, well, I'll understand that when I'm a Buddha. You know what I mean? When I become Buddha,
you will.
I'll understand that, just automatically. But maybe I just can't. It's one of those things you can't. Yeah. And I also come back to with a lot of these questions. I come back to, what was it? Buddha's 14 unanswered. Was it 14 unanswered questions?
Yeah. There's some number of questions that the Buddha didn't.
I can't remember how many. And there are reasons why he didn't answer those questions, because it would have been completely unhelpful. There's no way to convey the answers to the questions, and they're unhelpful, and they cause further delusion to even engage in, or something like that. And I think I always come back to that with all these questions. I go, is it kind of in that? Is this one kind of in that category that
right? Well,
you're just not going to get an answer until you are Buddha, basically. But.
Well, in early Buddhism tended to avoid certain philosophical questions, right? And Mahayana Buddhism came along and definitely did not avoid philosophical questions. I mean, Mahayana thinkers dove right in and came up with answers to all these questions, right?
That's why it's kind of up the street. It's kind of one of the reasons that I really like Mahayana Buddhism, because it does that. But anyway.
Yeah. Mahayana, I mean, we are both, I think, Mahayana Buddhists, correct? So we look at the Dharma through the Mahayana framework, right?
Worldview.
Yeah. And, the questions of, we can't really use the term theodicy, right? Because that refers to the idea of God in relation to the problem of evil. But, it's not true. Like, I've heard people say, well, there's a problem of evil in Christianity, but Buddhists don't have that problem. No, we have that problem. We have to deal with the problem just like everybody else has to deal with the problem. The problem of evil doesn't magically vanish when you become a Buddhist. But in terms of, why is there samsara if nirvana, if the reality is perfect, why does samsara exist and so on? This definitely comes down to, we don't, there's no ultimate creator of the world in Buddhism, right? So reality hasn't been created by some other reality. Reality is reality. This is reality. So, and then Nagarjuna comes along, very important phrase that also pops up in Pure Land Buddhism, right? In Shinran Shonin, which is nirvana is samsara. And samsara is nirvana. And you can't have one without the other. The limit of one, Nagarjuna puts it as the limit of the one is the limit of the other. And this is all way beyond my intellectual capacity to comprehend, by the way. I studied the Nagarjuna's treatise on Madhyamaka, or the middle way, and it's just it's so hard to get your mind around, because he was writing it's the path of sages, right? He's writing it for people who are on the self-power way to Buddhahood, and therefore it's the ultimate truth of Mahayana. But for you and me, it's way beyond anything we can comprehend. Yeah, I mean, if we did comprehend it, our minds would explode. if we comprehended it really, we'd be awakened, we'd be enlightened, we wouldn't be bamboo.
But as a bamboo, if we actually, tried to find around it as an ordinary human, like, it would be mind-blowing. I guess that's the other aspect of that question too, is not only has it done that at some point, like, and this is where I know there isn't a, I want to go at some original point, that's the bamboo, that's the ordinary, ignorant, deluded human mind saying there's a start of something. There really isn't the start of something, first of all. But then it's done it over and over. Like we get to a point where, because there's the cycles, there's the sort of ascending and descending kalpas, and then there's the big kahuna kalpas that have, within them the four sort of large kalpas, and then and there's the mini kalpas. Anyway, so, but the big process where everything eventually gets, and all that's left is the sort of super refined, level of, realm of samsara. That's beyond, that's not beyond form, but the formless, the arupaloka, like just really highly refined meditative state consciousness existence, and then it goes, and then it starts coming back, basically. And so it does this over and over again. So how, if it's perfect, why does it keep
right?
You know what I mean? So that's another part of it. But I get that, again, because I'm not enlightened, I'm going to see it in these ways. I am, again, all these questions, I am not, the Dharma is right. Okay, I know within me, I know, the Dharma is correct. It's just, I still have these questions about how it's correct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We do. We have questions.
And that's a block. That's another part of this block. Anyway, it comes back to that original,
right.
If the problem of evil, it's not quite the same as the problem of evil thing, but it's the problem of, samsara.
Why is there suffering?
The problem of suffering, the problem of samsara in the first place. If Buddhism is the supreme, highest, perfect, actual, real reality, why we end up with samsara? And if that's where it came, and anyway. Sorry, so good. It's the how. How is it true? Not why is it true? And then when I actually look at the explanation of how that cycle that I just was talking about, and it reinstantiating again, and that from the very earliest states of, there's just those thoughts, and then there's the stars are actually these, like, conscious, there's these conscious lights, and then and it's really amazing and cool. I love the explanation of how, and the reverse as well, of how it how it starts destroying, and then gets right to that refined level, but then nope, not done yet. And it comes back and it's amazing, and it's beautiful, and it's mind-blowing, and it's makes sense, but there's still that question.
Right.
If
in Buddhism,
if Dharmakaya, why samsara? Sorry. Anyway,
and again, it's without beginning and without end, right? So it's kind of, and this is why the Buddha probably didn't answer those questions, is because they're based on the faulty premise of, why does this exist instead of something else? But this is what there is. There isn't something else. It's an interesting question, and this is just my perspective, but I think these are important questions, but you do have to realize that some at what point do you have to say, I don't understand this, and I won't necessarily ever. And it's kind of like the parable the Buddha gave with the guy who got shot by the arrow. He has all these questions too. Where did this arrow come from? Who shot me?
That is so me.
What is the arrow made of? What is the, all these questions.
That is so me. That's exactly. Yeah. But go ahead. Yeah.
And then what did the Buddha say? These questions don't pertain to the problem, which
getting
is
the arrow out,
healing this guy who's dying from an arrow wound.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting the arrow out, stopping the bleeding. How do you? These are the questions you need to be asking, right? So, it's. I think that what I want to do in our discussions is, I think a lot of your questions with regard to like the Adi Buddha and, Dharma bodies and, there's a lot of them, and how are they all related and so on. First of all, these questions do all have answers. But I think what I want to do is I want to introduce some passages where Shinran Chonin talks about, Amida and what Amida is and so on. And then as we kind of think about these passages, I think a lot of these questions that you have will kind of resolve themselves sort of in light of, what Jodo Shinshu teaching is. Now, to kind of go back to what you were saying about, provisional and true in the sutras and so on. Well, so you have the 5 true vows, and those 5 are, let's see if I can remember all 5. The first one is, if my light should be limited, even to any degree, whatever, may I not attain enlightenment. So the vow of infinite light. The second is, if my life should be limited, my lifespan should be limited to any degree, may I not attain enlightenment. So the vow of unlimited life, or infinite life. And just let's talk about those two. So this is who and what Amida is, right? These 2 vows. So when we say,
pardon the pun,
in the name, yeah, exactly, it's in the name. Amida means infinite.
Amitabha, Amitayas, Amida, yeah,
right. And in Sanskrit means infinite. Amitabha, I think, is infinite life, I believe. Hopefully I'm not mixing these
Amitabha,
up.
Yeah, I think Amitabha is infinite light, and Amitayas is infinite life.
Infinite life? Okay.
I'm not sure. It could be the other way around, actually.
It could be the other way around. Unfortunately, I can't remember Sanskrit. But the point is these 2 names for Amida, in Japanese, we just say Amida, which is like is just the Amita part, right? Yeah. But these point to, and an interesting thing that I learned in Shuo Bukkyo Gakuin is, think about it this way. You have 3 dimensions of space, right? And then you have the dimension of time. And these 2 vows establish that Amida is infinite in space. So that is the vow of my light being limited in any direction, right? So that you have space. And then my life, which is a temporal dimension, being limited. So Amida is the Buddha that is infinite in time and space, right?
Yep.
So those are 2 of the 5 vows. Now, the next one is, if the beings in my land should not attain the stage of non-retrogression and achieve enlightenment after one lifetime, may I not attain enlightenment.
Okay.
And then the fourth is, if my name should not be praised by all Buddhas throughout the 10 directions, may I not attain enlightenment. And then the fifth is, of course, the original vow, the primal vow, the 18th vow, which is if beings who say my name even 10 times and awaken joyful faith and aspire to be born in my land should not be born there, may I not attain enlightenment, and excluded except for those who have committed the 5 grave offenses or slandered the right Dharma. So those 5 vows, according to Shinran, are the true vows. And then the rest are provisional vows. Now, what you said is, why are these true? And is it because they relate to Bambu and Mapo? Well, that is true.
Or how are they true? How are they true?
Right.
More how. I don't really ask
how
why.
Are they?
Why is it nowhere? Question. Why gets you nowhere? How? It's more of a how are these true? Is the
okay.
What way are these true? Like how is it true? I assume they're true. I just assume they're true, but how?
Yes. And the how is Kyogyo Shinsho. Because Kyogyo Shinsho, in each chapter of Kyogyo Shinsho basically covers the content of these 5 vows. In fact, that is the structure of Kyogyo Shinsho. So Shinran Shonin, determined that these were the 5 true vows. Now, question I had is, well, what about the other vows? Now, if you look at some of these vows, one of them is, if there should be, a hell in my land, may I not attain, or any evil realm in my land, may I not attain enlightenment. And then another interesting one is, if the beings in my land after death should be born in an evil realm, or one of the evil courses, may I not attain enlightenment. Now, if you take that vow at face value, it's saying that beings in the Pure Land die, right? Yeah. So that's a bit of a strange concept. The Pure Land in Jodo Shinshu is, beyond kind of, it's like transcendent in the sense that it transcends all of these, evil realms. And when you are born in the Pure Land, you don't die at some point, right? So again, you have concepts in the sutras that have, were written in a certain stage of development, and you have to ask, what is true? What is the ultimate truth here? And that's where Shinran, the masters, show us what that, ultimate truth is. And but again, like you said, sometimes you read the explanation and you think, isn't this kind of mental gymnastics, right?
Yeah, contradictory or something. And somehow I know it's not. I know it's not, but it kind of sounds that way to me. The way I'm bringing it in, it comes into my mind. That could be my mind doing that. My mind is right. I know it's my mind that's doing that, but it's still a blockage. It still is a block. It's still a. Do you see what I mean? That's where I'm with it.
Yeah.
I don't
totally.
I don't really question the Dharma. Yeah. It's just, it's not computing,
Yeah.
And of course it's not, but because I'm a bamboo, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and this is where listening comes in. So deep listening, chomon, hearing, because we're not just critically assessing the Dharma based on some constructed standard of what is. We're really hearing, this teaching which is intended, as we discussed before, for me, for my salvation, right? For my liberation.
For the arrow to be pulled out.
For the arrow to be pulled out, right? Yes. And so what happens when people lose sight of that soteriological dimension of Buddhism? The whole point of Buddhism is it's a medicine for people who are sick. It's to heal us, right? It's the Buddha is called the great, physician, because he gives the medicine of the Dharma to beings who are in need of it, which is you and me. So there's a dimension here that you could call it a religious dimension. It's not just that we're analyzing these texts as on a philosophical level or an intellectual level, but we have to really kind of live the texts and how do they relate to my predicament, and who and what is the truth that's being
and sort
expressed.
of lay aside. I have to kind of sort of lay aside all that how stuff. Do you know what I mean? Don't I? I mean, I have to understand the basic teachings, but I kind of at some point I have to go, yeah, we just need to get the arrow out. I don't need to know what school you went to for your MD. I don't need to know, who your mentor was and what the, do you know what I mean? What your medical philosophy is behind, these kinds of injuries. I don't need to understand that. There's no way I could understand that because you're an MD and I'm a patient that is unable and I'm clueless, really. But I mean, except beyond maybe basic little bit of biology and anatomy, like other than that, clueless. So maybe I just need to let you do the work. Do you see what I mean? There's a point where I have to just empty the cup thing.
Now you're talking, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And this
with
is
these
exactly
with these big oceanic Dharma questions. It's like me trying to have this, discussing, these the medical concepts with the MD trying to pull the arrow, get the arrow out. And I don't know.
It's like
out the medical concepts. I can't. There's no way I could. Anyway, sorry.
Unless you were an MD yourself,
Right.
So if you're a Buddha yourself, then you don't need your awakened, right?
So that's when I can have those discussions. But you won't even have to. It's just already automatic. You just then the discussions then after that are for the other the still ignorant beings, the still beings that are still trapped in samsara. That's what the discussion's for. It's not for you after that point. You don't need to have. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. It's like Reverend Tetsuo Uno said in that article I sent you. You should listen to the Dharma like you're hearing the results of your autopsy. Same analogy, basically, right? And so, questions. I think the questions that you have at this stage are all really important because you can't make sense of Jodo Shinshu if you don't know the answers to these questions, like questions about the 5 true vows, provisional, what is true, and why and how, and also the nature of Amida, I think, is a question that
I get
Westerners tend to ask more.
I will say it this way: it's more. I get the 5 vowels and why they're true. It's more and how they're true. It's more not as a Buddha would know. I just mean I get the basic teaching of them. What it's more how is everything else provisional? How and part of my mind goes, well, because Amida is Amida. Dharmakaya was Dharmakaya and now is Amida, and because Dharmakara, sorry, not Dharmakaya, Dharmakara was Dharmakara and now is Amida, and would have made other pathways for people who aren't quite, would have accommodated all karmic conditions, all karmic beings, all in whatever state they're in, and whatever their mind states, would have covered everything. So everything is in there. He's covered everything. That's why he's like the ultimate Buddha, these 48 vows, because they are the most comprehensive and will cover every possible comer.
Right.
Every possible scenario. Yeah. So of karmic existence, like, of beings in samsara that need to attain enlightenment eventually. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. So I get that. I get that. Yeah. Sorry. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's right. So they're provisional because they're intended to guide people to the truth, the ultimate truth, right? That is the point of provisional. It's not that they're provisional, therefore they're useless. That's not it. What it is, like you said, it's to guide people to, for example, people who believe in self-power. We have this mindset of self-power, and when the Buddha teaches, the vow, for example, that those who do good deeds and have plant roots of good will be born in the Pure Land. This is a provisional means, and Shinran discusses this at length in the 6th chapter of Kyogyo Shinsho, and I think we definitely need to go there and see what he has to say, right? But the short answer is what is provisional in the sutras is an expedient means, a skillful means to guide people who are at some level of development to what is the ultimate truth or reality. So so in terms of why is provisional there at all, that would be the answer, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's it's preparatory to get, so they can embrace the true teaching,
right?
That's kind of how Shakyamuni himself taught. He did these other teachings in different phases and cycles to kind of build people up toward the truth.
Exactly, and then the
made a way at the end for people that still didn't get it. he gave he gave teachings at the end of his life. Okay, they still don't get that the Pure Land Sutras are the true teaching, the ultimate teaching, the reason I came to the world. So I'm still going to give them this one last thing before I go into my parinirvana. It's just, and here you go. So, here, along with the Pure Land Sutras, here's the Threefold Lotus Sutra for anybody else who still doesn't get it. Still doesn't get it.
And remember, the Lotus Sutra, as we discussed before, right, was actually taught by the Buddha right before he went to teach the Pure Land teaching to Queen Videhi.
I think it was the Contemplation Sutra. I think it was the Meditation Sutra.
Correct.
At the same time as, so it's simultaneous with the, the way it's described, it sounds to me like he did both. He's teaching both at the same time, because a Buddha do that. But anyway, that could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. remembering. I could be remembering the description from the sutra incorrectly, but that's the impression I got. Was when I think about it, I'm like, that was happening simultaneously. Very cool. do you know what I mean? At the same time.
The in the Pure Land, I don't know about the Lotus Sutra teaching, but I know in Pure Land, basically he taught the Lotus Sutra, and then he taught the
okay, so it did follow that.
Videhi.
He delivered that.
And then when they went back, I believe it was Ananda, reported the content of the Contemplation Sutra, and then everyone rejoiced. So it doesn't really say whether he interrupted teaching the Lotus Sutra to do that or not. So that's I can't really comment on that particularly, but
I suppose I just like to think of it that way. All this amazing, incredible stuff was happening simultaneously. The gathering in the sky, and then the Buddha went and delivered this other while he's still in his amazing, Buddha powers, Anyway, sorry. Imagination, sorry.
Definitely. Well, imagination is important as well, but so let's see how we are. I guess we're already out of time, but so we haven't, I think today has been mainly discussing like the types of questions and then why they are.
This is another big chunk. I think I touched on this before with more specific questions, but now we've got at the category of what it is.
Yeah.
And I think we've now, after this session, talking about this category of my blockages, call it. I think we've covered all the big ones that are been the most troubling, and have always caused me the most frustration and caused me to go back and forth and with it. I think we've now covered that. Now we could start saying, okay, let's go to the teachings and see what they say. We've now explored the questions, so we know what they are. We've explored the questions and doubt, the categories of questions and doubts and blockages that I have. And now I think we can kind of go, okay, let's see what the teachings say. I mean, we have been doing that while we've been discussing them, but in some cases very specifically in detailed ways. But do you see what I'm saying? I think.
Yes, I agree.
I always knew it would have to get to that. I would just have to get it all up and on the table. And I think I pretty much do now. Here it is. Here's all my chips are in. All my cards are on the table now. Okay, I call.
Do you feel a sense of relief that you've got it all off your chest?
Yes. You have no idea. Each time we did a chant, these big kahuna ones, it was always a relief. But now I've got them all. I've never discussed these in this detail before. I've touched on them with other people in different, in the True Buddhism group and Amitaji, and with individual members of each of those sanghas, and with my teacher, teachers, but touched on them. Didn't ever really. Maybe Paul Roberts a bit more than others. I may have explored. Nothing like this, though. I never got to this. Though amazingly, he did understand me quite a bit with what little bit he was pretty amazing. He did understand what little bit he had to work with what I actually shared. Yeah. It was pretty amazing. But anyway, it's obviously Amita at work there to. But anyway, so so it is a huge relief, because I've never been able to bring myself to do it, to be ruthless, to have the courage to do it, to have the trust, to have and that's just all problems with me. I'm taking responsibility for what, not blaming on anybody else that I didn't trust this person or that thing or this. It's this is the first time I've been able to get to a point where, okay, I have established a point where I can trust, I have courage, I'm motivated, because I don't ever want to go through that whole process of either getting super frustrating and leaving it and then coming back, or getting to the point where I convince myself I have shinshin and I don't. I'm just like, okay, so the first time I've been this motivated to be, ruthless and get it on the table, and to really, to have the ability to do it. Even like, it seems like something would stop me within myself from really being bothered, for even feeling a motivation, or being bothered, or getting past myself and my own anger and frustration about it to get it on the table. Like, this is the first time I've been able to do that, which is it's pretty amazing to me that I actually have. So thank you so much for these discussions, and for taking the time and all the preparation that you put into it, and it's deeply, deeply appreciated. What's the word? Akagi-sama. Is that right?
Yes.
That's that level of appreciation, to Amita, ultimately, but to you as well for doing.
It's really my pleasure.
And for Kobai Sensei, to all these years I've gone back and forth to him. This is like probably the fourth or fifth time I went back and said, help me, Sensei.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, I've also said that, for me, it's an opportunity to discuss Jodo Shinshu, which is always, rewarding and enjoyable. And, I think that it's great that you have been able to come to this point where you can, put all these questions out there and just admit to yourself, right? So what happens I think that if you're a member, or if you're involved with some group where everybody is kind of, has their head down and they're toiling along, and you have all these doubts, what can happen is you start to sort of hide them, and sort of, I'm not going to show all my cards, right?
Yep.
So the good thing is, like, when we have these discussions, there's no judgment, there's nothing judgmental. And really, ideally, that's how the Dharma should be presented, in any case, whatever the context. And that's why Rinyo Shonin says, he says, speak up, say what's on your mind. Whatever it is. I mean, it's only when you're just bottling it up and not saying what you're thinking that is the problem, then it becomes an obstacle, right? So, I mean, I'm really glad to hear that I have been able to help you get these questions, out there, even if we haven't resolved them yet. I mean, that's a whole nother, that's what we have to do from here on, right? Is discuss, like you said. I agree. We've kind of been setting the framework. We've been putting it all out, and now we need to sort of start turning to the teachings that address and are related to these questions, right?
It is like I've been laying down my hand. Like, okay, that week I put down the 2 cards. Okay, this is the net. Now I've got it down. It's all pretty much more on the table. Only took about 2 months a few months via Messenger, and about 6 sessions of over an hour sessions to to get all my questions on the table, which is actually pretty impressive, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Well,
when did we start to correspond? From September, was it, of last year?
I think, was it last year? And then I think we started the Zoom in, when did we start Zoom? I don't.
couple
months ago, right? Yeah,
something like that.
I think so.
Two, maybe even more than that. I don't know, but yeah, it was after Christmas, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah,
it was after the winter, holiday seasons. Yeah. Season. The winter festive season. It was after, but yeah. So what? September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So yeah, about 6 months. So 6 months, a few months of messenger correspondence and 6 sessions. I've got all the major groupings of doubts, questions, and blockages / issues on the table. So,
which is great, and the chips are down, you could say now. So we need to. I think I actually came prepared with a lot of topics for today, but what we ended up doing, I think, was even more importantly, really establishing, your questions and the nature and just how big, and what kinds of questions you have. So that's great. And then there's some things from last session that we didn't get around to discussing this time, but if you want to, next week we can maybe go back to some of those, as well as I have there's just so much to talk about. It's like the ocean, it's
oceanic. It's the word. It's the word I use often. It's oceanic.
Yeah.
Anyway, so much to discuss and cover, but yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much. And yeah, we will to be continued. Yes. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great rest of your evening. What are you going to be up to? What's happening in Japan?
In Japan?
Sunday night.
From now I'll be eventually going to bed because I have to get up tomorrow and go to work.
Full night.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care.
You too. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Fantastic. Take care.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
All right. Take care.